Hello everyone and welcome back to the campaign diary for my Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign, Aracséa edition. In today's session the party enjoy some downtime, see a familiar face and are thrown into a plan for war. So this session ends on the 25th of Caerl Din and is the official start of Act 2 of the campaign, and this will probably be a shorter video since it'll be relatively easy to explain what happened, as most of the actions were done by me during the game, it being mostly about the council meeting, so having to spend personally a lot of time monologuing while the runaways watched. But to start, the party enjoyed some downtime and spent some time doing various other bits, so let's go through that first. Let's start with Freda, who went in search in Bremen to find any information about her father, Frederick's Olmahan. After a couple of days asking and investigating, she basically found that he was a foreigner. The locals who remember him say that he was a handsome adventurer who spoke strangely, and that he left after a couple of months spent in the Frostgates, or it might have been a year, they weren't quite sure, and no one really knows where he went. So for you guys, I'll tell you that Fredericks is a gentleman from the Corin Reaches, a Bloodborne-esque nation, I think I've spoken about it before, to the far southeast of the Frostgales on Aracséa, and I maybe plan to use him in a later campaign as an NPC that they may meet, depending on various bits and bobs. Freda, if she manages to find any like family tree records or somewhere where she can look up names for things, in particular about human nations, she'll find that the Olmahan name is one of the founding families of the Sanctor Ecclesiarchy. So she may find that link there, and yeah, that kind of thing. Anyway, after that she spent some time setting up a little fighting ring where people could just blow off some steam, make bets if they wished, and it was here that Forsburn showed up in secret using disguised self and challenged Freda to a friendly duel, which resulted in a stalemate as both parties kept drawing on their like strength and dexterity checks. So it was just a good chance there for Forsburn and her to roleplay and just clear some air with Freda. Mutiny spent her time at the Curator's Eye in the East Haven, researching the nature of the scrolls that she took from the mist-covered island, with intent to perhaps try and perfect the spell that the witch had used to bind that devil. Um, Obviously, Mutiny will be trying to use it against her own devil, maybe to resist the chain devil um, pull to find her, or maybe just even straight up use it against Crowley himself. Ultimately, her research led her with a decision. Did she want to pursue the blood magic line that the original spell used? Because the original spell probably would work with some tampering and with some more work, but it requires a shit ton of power. Or could she find some other means of power? And that led her down a line of research which involved her psionic crystal that she has, and she's now beginning to look into where she might find more of these psionic crystals, knowing that they are used as power sources for illithid constructs. So that is where her mind is at. Forsburn spent his time talking to Raz about just exactly what was Raz doing out in the long shelf, because every time he's asked him before, he's just kind of blown him off. And Raz basically just says he was on his way to investigate something at the glacier, and he just stumbled across Forsburn. There was a bit more to it than that, but that is what Raz told Forsburn, and that was a lie. Raz was not there for that at all. Forsburn didn't make an insight check on this, so I think Forsburn just believed Raz that he was on the way to investigate something. Probably backed up by the information that Forsburn had seen the vision of something beneath the glacier, so maybe he was using that as like to guarantee that answer. But no, Raz was there for an entirely different reason, and that has something to do with what he actually is, what Raz actually is, and I do not have time to discuss that sort of thing in this video. I've talked about it a little bit, I've hinted at it before, like this kind of like this godlike power. But yeah, it's something a bit different related to like the whole cosmology of the world. But regardless, Forsburn believed him and went on with his questions to ask about the golden mark that disappeared during the smashing of the binding crystal at this mist-covered isle. I don't know if you remember, Forsburn had some gold magic that kind of came off of him as part of the dispel, to which Raz pointed out was just like a means for Raz to keep an eye on Forsburn. That Forsman did decide, Carl did decide to insight check. He rolled a 10, I think, and so yeah, basically just Raz was telling the truth, and of course he was. It was just a means for him to keep an eye on his new, his savior. Yeah, whatever the word is for the one who has been saved, I guess. And that was more or less it. Forsburn says his farewells, not knowing when he's going to meet Raz again, and leaves. From there, Forsburn proceeds to travel to Tourmaline under the guise of, just like a human, because people in Tourmaline don't seem to like coaching very much. And he went to Marta. Remember the Corin Reach woman? And stole her father's ring, that entwined white fox ring of Marta's father. Kind of just snuck in and took it off him. Which he did successfully, and he wore it and later found it to be a ring of warmth that is pretty much useless for him because it's already kind of got cold resistance and stuff. But he did also find that he couldn't take the ring off now he put it on. So, yeah, the ring's cursed, and the nature of the curse we will find out, or he will find out later. I don't remember if I told you guys, but it is related to Ravacyn and the Lonely Wood story, which I'm hoping the group is probably going to investigate next after talking about it with Duvessa and trying to get things going on. But that comes later. And then we went from there. We pretty much just went straight to the council meeting with each of the speakers arriving, all apart from who didn't come. It was the Speaker of Bremen, who of course has been ill, East Haven, and Lonely Wood, and Dugan's Hole. Captain Indra, in fact, was sent in East Haven's stead because the speaker was still kind of recovering. Lonely Wood obviously isn't there. Dugan's Hole has been missing. They've heard he's back better, but it doesn't seem is that he's there yet. So one by one they took up seats, and I had like this huge monologue of proceedings that I basically just went down and read from this script I made, which I'm not going to go over in this video, it will take way too long. But the point of it was to make the players aware of the stakes that all the speakers were experiencing, the progression of the rhyme, and that sort of stuff. Make them aware of the tensions brewing, and also to introduce them to Speaker Cranach, a tiefling speaker of Caer Dineval, who they had yet to meet, and this idea of a cult that he may be in the pocket of, that Hruna kind of accuses him of being in. And this is indeed the cult of Levistus that is there, somewhat tied to Mutiny's backstory. She has visions of going to Caer Dineval, and they have heard a little bit of the Levistus cult from the sword, the Black Ice medallions from the Innkeeper in Bremen. That's related to her son being missing and taken by these blue-skinned tieflings. So whether they wish to invade this in the future, we will see. It'll be an interesting interesting story to pick up. And then about halfway through this meeting, bells begin to ring outside Brinshanda, and a guard comes in saying that the speaker needed to see what was going on. And of course they all went outside, and they saw beyond the gates as they climbed onto the palisades a horde of goblins being led by a bugbear. This was none other, of course, than Nark and Squawk's horde. And as Nark gets just before the gate, they can see he's covered in blood, and he just collapses, more or less, able to just say a few words. When the speaker asked him what his business was, he claims and just points towards Freda that she would speak on his behalf. And like, it was a big nod to the second session there, where where they first met Nark, and a big kind of full circle thing, and see if people could remember, and things like that. Eventually, the speaker lets them in, and they spend about an hour or so of rest in the council to nurse him back to health, before eventually the council continues, and Nark is introduced by Speaker Duvessa to the rest of the council to give his piece. And this is the kind of the last bit of information to confirm the impending war for the players here. He says he had also a big speech that he said. He basically says he went in search of an abandoned hold out in the Dragon's Tooth Mountains, a place where he could build a grand city for his people, but found an ambush instead. After fighting them off, he was approached by Aracséa, who he had originally thought was a grey goblin, but now recognises as a Dwargar lord. This is, of course, the same Dunamis Aracséa as we know him, as the party knows him. And he proceeded to show him Nark around his fortress, claiming that if he didn't join him, he would basically destroy him and all he knew. I think Nark kind of says, like, he showed me his power and lethality in, like, what he could bring to bear, his armies, his machines, and finally he shows him the secret weapon, the thing that they've been using all that Oathblast for, a drake made of sin, the Chardelaine dragon, as I have told you all before, is what they've been using it for. And it's here that Nark says that he refused, didn't want to be a part of this tyranny, and fled, fighting his way out. He could only hear the shrill metallic shrieks of the beast before running to Bryn Shander to seek refuge, and it's still that noise in his head, the noise at the end of that trailer that I showed you guys yesterday, that he hears every night in his mind and in his dreams. It's with this information, though some of the speakers, of course, deny the plausibility of the claim and think that it's a spy, and it kind of ruptures all in that big old, people shouting across the tables. Speaker Divessa of Bryn Shander kind of quietens them all down and declares a movement for war. And it's basically kind of like this right passed down by the giant Jarls before her to name champions of the North and basically, seize control over 10 towns when people can't make up their minds. And because the council couldn't agree on what to do, and even after declaring that and basically seizing control, much like the Inquisition thing in Dragon Age Inquisition, just boom, I'm in charge now. This is the rights passed down to me. I'm going to declare this so I can make the decisions. Even then, some of the speakers kind of left, claiming that they would need to consider the ramifications of anything they do to help or hinder. And everyone's just all being a bit overly cautious or just not believing, and they just kind of left the meeting. It was also here where Kranich pointed out that in order for this to be legal in accordance to their own tradition among the Skulders, among the Skulders named as champions of the North, one of them must be a member of the Old Alliance. Whatever that meant, the party doesn't really know much about any of this kind of proceeding up here, but it basically meant there needed to be a Jorga. And it was at this point that I had Stronus return, Stronus, who had came in with Dugan's Hole's speaker about roughly before Nark came in. Dugan's Hole's entourage arrived, and he just stood forward, lifted over his hood, and said, "I will honour the Old Alliance." And of course, a speaker of Dugan's Hole kind of confirmed that yes, Stronus is my Skulder. He's the one who rescued me from the wolves, and that was kind of the rumour that they had heard that someone had been in Dugan's Hole and had sorted out that wolf problem there. And it basically legalised all this action. And that was more or less the end of the session. We ended it there. Divessa and Haruna alongside the United Runaways. Forsburn, who had, of course, by this time left with Flintlock, saying his goodbyes to the party. And we more or less, it was just kind of Runa, Divessa, just going, we've got a shitload of work to do. And obviously next session there's going to be a lot of explaining about what all this means to the party, because none of them know, none of them are from this area. A lot of explaining about what's happening, which will be fun. And that was it. That was it, really. Obviously, during that Nark speech, they got to watch the trailer because that was a part of Nark's speech, and that is his voice in the trailer that you guys watched in the last episode. And we're pretty much just gonna pick it up straight from there next time, which should be super soon. We've got another session actually booked quite early on. So this is the official start of Act 2, Prepare for War, and that was session 22, of course. 22 sessions in. As always, actually before this, keep eyes out for another fireside chat I'm going to have with Carl, and we're going to be able to talk about the entirety of Forsburn's arc here, as is now done for the foreseeable future with Forsburn as a player character. We're going to go back to Stronus, and keep an eye out for that. As always, thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you guys next time.